John, Paul, what a great show. I really loved it. One thing that was fascinating to me as I was listening to you was how you talk, and you talked about mature business, mature products. And I think a lot of business owners probably struggle with that as well. But you found a niche or a category that you wanted to specialize in. How difficult was it a process in amongst everything you could have chosen to find something you thought was going to work for your company?
Probably wasn't that hard. It's like everything. If you start a process, the process takes care of it. So we did a bit of strategic planning. I think I facilitated the very first one. I had no clue what we're doing, but we used the Argenti process, and the first thing in that is doing your SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Once you write them down, it's pretty obvious that you've got to move from where we moved to where we needed to go. And we were playing in that space a little bit. We just didn't realise that that was probably the secret to our future at the time. So for us, it became a little bit obvious a little bit early, and we've been heading down that track for a long, long time.
It's interesting listening to you talk like that, Paul. And John, obviously, you work with family businesses and had a lot of experience in this. Paul found it when he went through that SWOT analysis, it started to become obvious. Is it that easy for all family businesses when they're at that turning point, or does it take sometimes more work? And how does a facilitator like yourself help them break through those barriers?
It's not an easy process. Paul and his brother I've known for some years, and they're very astute, and they work very well together, and they challenge each other. Most people, if they're independent, if they're founders or they're running the business by themselves, the biggest challenge is what you don't know, you don't know. Where do you go to find somebody to talk to? As a family business advisor, I'm also a Family Firm Institute fellow, so I've done international studies as well as worked with people in Australia. These are important people to talk to if you find somebody with qualifications that understands the processes, the coaching that's required, the different ways and means to work out what your values might be. If you don't have values, if you don't think you have values, believe it or not, you do have them, it's just you haven't articulated them yet. So we need to document them to be able to share them with not just family, but clients and suppliers, so that we can have alignment and we can actually have great relationships, not just good relationships. So there's a lot, it's not always an easy path, is what I'm saying.
It's interesting as you went down that path, Paul, and then you called it a niche in a niche. All right, you've got your category in the health, and then you found this, this is another one that is. How did that come about for yourselves? Was that just because you're working in that field, it seemed to just evolve for you? Or did you do some more work to go, can we go deeper?
Well, I mentioned that very first SWOT analysis that we did, but I'm going back 25, 30 years now, and we've done them every year. And different facilitators, slightly different views on the matter, different processes, and something always pops up. You know, we're trying to become the thought leader in lead taps at the moment, because there's a bit of issue around Perth with perceived lead in the water. So we always come up with these little areas, but certainly mental health, I think we all know that's a growing market. We're already in health tap where we just think we can win there, but it's a product we can take offshore and probably win. It's scalable, whereas so many of our other products we just can't take offshore.
Oh, interesting word you use there, scalable. And a lot of business owners, if you went to any kind of meeting, you'll be hearing, you've got to make your business scalable.
Yeah.
Was that what became attractive when you started to realise that was actually a product or market?
Yeah, I think so, because to be honest, our business probably isn't particularly scalable. It is within the confines of Australia. We've got a lot of work to do there, and we're working very hard at it, and we can have a very successful business. But if we want to take it offshore, you've got to find a real niche within a niche, because we're not a very productive nation as far as competing with the rest of the world. So you've got to find a real niche within a niche.
John, from an advisor's point of view, personally I found that very fascinating when you said a niche within a niche. When you work with families, is that what you're constantly looking for? That next opportunity that maybe just getting blind, they just can't see it at the moment?
It's a combination of working with the family and with the business. So you have to have a balance, and sometimes the family can be really supportive of changing direction to follow niches. At other times, depending on the age of the people that are working in the business, they can be very fixed on we can't change. And there's no innovation. We only do it this way. So there's processes that we can go through to start to make those changes more visible. And when we talk SWOT analysis and other ways of looking at the business, challenging where we sit, whether we've got some products that are absolutely fantastic and other products that are absolute shockers. They're terrible, they're dead products, they don't turn over, they just sit there holding value for no real purpose. How do we move forward? How do we change that dynamic? So that's a challenge both for the family and for the business. So you're working hand in hand, trying to bring a whole lot of change. And sometimes the family you're bringing and sometimes the business you're bringing, they don't have skin in the game if they're not owners. What does that mean for them? So it's quite a balanced exercise. You have to move everybody.
There's one thing that Paul was saying, and then he was talking about values, and he highs on values and more behavioural traits for people. If you don't get past that, you don't get 3 green lights, I think Paul was saying, you don't get employed. From your perspective, when you work with families, how important is it to employ on those values and those behavioural traits and give people 3 green lights before they join you?
Firstly, the family has to know what their values are and have an understanding and a feel for their culture and their background and what they actually stand for. So the purpose conversation that Paul talks about is critically important. And hiring staff to work within a family business, having values that match, having understanding of real purpose makes a huge difference. There are a number of situations where CEOs have been hired to run family businesses and the culture match and the values match doesn't work, and those hired CEOs, they don't work. So very quickly the family says, no, we can't work like this, and they change. Sometimes if it's a family board, if the board business is more mature and the family's more mature, the family can, as a board, choose a CEO, and the CEO can manipulate the board to some degree, and the family may lose ownership of the business. So there's all sorts of issues that all come back to values, communication, sharing, and purpose.
Well, on values, and we hear that's a big name, and it is bantered around everywhere. And families, as you rightly said, it's part of their cultures. It's been around for ever since families were in business. Did you find coming up with your own values, because some people find it very difficult, they come up with values that are just on paper and no substance. Did you find it more advantageous because you're working with your brother, so you had a very similar background, or did that cause a couple of little glitches to try and identify what you really both wanted?
Well, we didn't actually come up with the values that we wanted. We were quite happy with the business. So we got consultants in to find out what our values were. And they did a survey of all the staff. And they put all the answers into a computer, I guess, and it popped out. And we had choices to make of what came up on the list. And we chose the ones that resonated the most with us. So the values are pride, accountability, will-do attitude. And they're quite generic. There's probably other companies that have them. But it's the behaviours that sit under those that are really important. And we stitch them into our performance appraisals and make sure people are living our values. So, most values are the same, all bad: ownership, accountability, responsibility. It's above the line, below the line, blame, excuse, denial. That's your generic one. They're fantastic values. But what behaviours do you put behind them? So we have a document called the Galvin Way, and it's the way we do stuff. And it's got values, it's got behaviours, it's got our purpose, it's all those things on the one sheet.
How much time do you spend educating your staff and making sure they're all up to date on those values and those behaviours? For me, I'm ex-military, so for me, values are behaviours. They drive your behaviours. So
Yeah, that's right.
do you spend a lot of time, or do you have regular meetings where you visit them, or they're part of?
We've just done a values survey just to tap in and make sure that they're still current, and we do that. We hand out prizes. They're just popping up everywhere. Performance appraisals. We have a gain share where it gets talked about. We do engagement surveys with our staff, and the questions sort of revolve around that a fair bit. Wherever you go in our premises, our values pop up everywhere. So we just stitch it into everything we do.
Yeah. I know one time I seen a sign hanging up in a Ford Motor Company, and it said "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
Yeah.
And I was listening to you talk about culture. You didn't want to be too corporatized. You want to be your way. Do you believe that having that strong culture in a family business is what gets you competitive against maybe the big corporates?
Yes, I do. In a simple answer, yes, I do strongly believe that. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, fantastic saying. And they've actually done some studies where, I don't know how they measure this, but culture is 8 times more important to the success of a business than strategy. So they put numbers behind it somehow. But to answer your question quickly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating. John, when you first start working with a family that's in business, and you like to talk to all the family members, I know that's part of your strategy, are you trying to uncover the culture of the business to get an understanding of how this organism works and blends together?
Definitely. I need to get an understanding of the players of the game, who I'm dealing with one-to-one, to get an idea just in talking with them, forming opinions, and trying to match what the values are that they have between each other. I take my bias off my shoulder and I throw it away.
That must
I've got
be
to
difficult sometimes. Come on.
Sometimes I'm challenged, I have to say, but I have to understand the people that I'm dealing with, and I have to go back as far as I can historically to see if there's repetition between generations. Sometimes there can be addiction, alcoholism, for example, where it shows up and repeats intergenerationally. Sometimes there are medical issues that crop up where there can be cancers or heart issues intergenerationally. So that might colour some of the work that we will do as far as health checks and things like that going forward. But it's really important for me to understand the culture and the history so that I can work with the people.
I am conscious of your time. I really appreciate you both staying back. I just got one more question. It was something you raised, and I think it's conscious capitalism as a big culture coming through. Just to generate to both of you, how important do you believe this kind of cultural attitude will drive the future success of businesses and corporations as we move forward?
I think it already is. The millenniums need to work for a company with a cause, and that's why companies really need to define their purpose beyond profit. What's the cause? How are you benefiting the planet? How are you going to make the planet a better place? And most businesses have something there. They just haven't sat down and done the exercise and gone through the discovery and realised what it is yet. But I think it's incredibly important to define that.
The perception from my side of things, I believe this conscious capitalism movement is incredibly powerful and very valuable and necessary. Those companies that don't look forward into this future will be perceived as greedy, and that isn't good for anybody. I mean, that just turns money over and puts money in somebody's pocket. But how does it give back to community? It's a real challenge.
It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you both. I am watching that clock. I know you've got to go. John, Paul, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.